Hello, friends. This is Wendy. Welcome. I'm so excited that you're here with me today. We are going to be using the extra cheese stamp set from Trinity along with the dies and then this really cute sentiment set that goes along with it. Brilliant sentiments. Ha ha ha. Puns intended for this entire video. I thought it would be fun to make a get well card using these products because everybody I know and their brother and mother and friend are sick or have recently been sick or are at the beginning of getting sick. It's just the season, you know? So I've got some yellow cardstocks here that I'm going to use. I've got some hexagon dies, and then I've got some of the beautiful shimmer spots from Trinity, and I'm cutting a piece of cardstock down to 4¼ by 5½, no, 4 by 5¼ and then I'm going to make a pattern using these die cut hexagons. I'm doing this in a ombre fashion, and I end up flipping this card upside down and using it from light to dark, but I build it from dark to light. So after I build the whole thing and kind of get a concept of how many pieces I'm going to use, where they're going to be, I basically move them all off of this piece of cardstock. And then I'm able to move forward with the hinge technique using a piece of cling wrap. So we'll get to that. At first I thought I would, I'm gonna try to glue all these down. And then I thought, no, I have a better idea. I have a better approach for this situation. So I taped these down with a low tack sticky tape, or I should say I taped down the card base. And then I went to adding my first 3 hexagons in my darkest yellow color. So once I get those all lined up just like I want them, I'm going to grab my press and seal and I'm going to put it over the top of just these 3 pieces and get these glued down, and then I will build out the rest of the card from there. So here's my press and seal. I kind of accidentally nudged and moved my hexagons there. So I'm going to get those back in place, and then I'm going to very carefully lay my press and seal over the top. And I can see here one of them is just a little bit off kilter, and being the perfectionist type A that I am, sometimes I couldn't let it go. It comes and goes. It's like, it's like a flu or a cold with me. Sometimes I can let things go, and other times I can't stand it and I have to fix it. I don't know if any of you are like that, but I'm like a type A, type B. I come in and out of the two, and I confuse a lot of people. So got to keep people on their toes. So here I'm using my glue and just going to glue all 3 of these pieces down in place. And then that's going to give me kind of like my base starting line to build the rest of the hexagons out the way I want them. Now, if I was extremely type A OCD, I would measure and make sure all of these were exactly the same distance apart. Nobody has time for that in their day. So I certainly do not. So I just eyeballed the difference and made sure that everything seemed to line up okay. And then I went to gluing all of my parts and pieces in place, and then moved on to my next lightest color and then the next lightest color. So this is a really easy process, and this will work for any shape dies that you have. This is a great way to create a simple and effective background that gives a little bit of texture and interest. It kind of reminds me of like laying tiles, and I feel like, building some sort of a background like this is just a fun way to use up also a lot of your scraps and extra supplies that you have laying around. Lord knows we all have plenty of excess when it comes to our card making tools. So this is a great way to use those things up. I cut enough of these that I could make 2 or 3 cards. I wasn't sure how many I was going to need, and I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do when I started out. So I just sat and I watched my show. I've been binge watching the TV show Castle, if you're familiar with that show. This is my second time watching it. It's really good if anyone's interested. It is on Hulu right now. And so I sat and watched that while I die cut all of these and got them all organized onto my card base. So after I get these all glued down and in place, you can see over on the left side, there's a couple of spots that are left with white. I did use my scraps to fill those places in. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the edge off of all of these pieces around this card base. We're just going to trim it away. I did use my non-stick scissors to do this because I do have glue on the where I went over the edges there. Once I got all those cut off, I was able to use some of the extra scraps from cutting these away to add them into those little teeny tiny white spaces that were left over, like little triangles. There's really no way to avoid some of those little finicky bits. You're just going to have spots that have those, but it's fairly easy to go in and just add a piece of cardstock there. It doesn't have to be cut absolutely perfect. What I did is I just overlapped it and then I trimmed it off exactly like I'm doing right now. So all in all, it ends up giving me a nice finished edge and a nice finished look. This also is a great technique for your card making, is to make sure that when you are doing a design like this, even if it's not hexagons, if it's floral, whatever it is, make it go off the edge of your cardstock. When you make it go off the edge of your cardstock, it feels more like a continuous pattern instead of centered into the middle. Now, the exception to that would be if you were trying to make it centered for some reason, then of course you wouldn't do this. But in this case, I wanted this to feel like a continuous pattern that was going off of the edge of my cardstock. So once I got all these bits and pieces put on, I let that glue sit for just a second to kind of set up because it is such a teeny tiny piece. I was afraid it would just come right off when I trimmed it. So I kind of held it with my finger as I trimmed it to make sure it stayed in place. And it worked great. This ended up working fantastic, and I had no issues getting all my little parts and pieces off there. I did have to go back in and trim up a few excess little spots, but it worked fine. So once we get this done, we're going to do some stamping. And I did cut a larger hexagon and then cut it in half. And this is going to be kind of our focal element on this card. I could have done a circle or a square, but I thought it would be kind of fun to use a hexagon so that we kept that pattern feeling the same. Then we are going to stamp our images and die cut them out. The reason I stamped them and die cut them, which is usually I would color them and then die cut them, the reason I did that is because I wanted them to just sit and dry while I did the next steps on my card. Here you can see I'm using every little area I can of this white cardstock in an attempt to save paper. I've gotten really frugal when it comes to my cardstocks and papers, so I'm very, very careful about trying to use every bits and pieces. In fact, I save way more than I probably should. I don't know if you do that, but I do. So the next thing I wanted to do is, while those were drying and making sure that the ink just set up really good because I was going to Copic color them, I did use a Copic Safe ink, but sometimes even with a Copic Safe ink, it's like if you stamp more than once, there's an extra layer of ink on there and it can kind of smear when you color. So I try to just give it an extra second if I had to stamp it 2 or 3 times to get a nice, clean, clear image. I cut an 1/8 of an inch strip of the medium tone yellow, and then I lined it on to the top of this half hexagon shape. And then I'm going to cut the excess off just like we did on the card base. And then we're going to stamp the sentiment. The sentiment is so cute. It says, what does it say? It says, not feeling too Gouda. So Gouda is one of my very favorite cheeses. I love Gouda. Well, first of all, I haven't met a cheese I don't like, okay? Me and cheese, we don't get along very well. Like, my gut doesn't like the cheese, but my mouth loves the cheese. Cheese is the bomb. So I can have some cheese, I just gotta limit it. I absolutely love Gouda cheese. I love Manchego. There's so many cheeses I love. Like I said, haven't met one that I don't like. Even the stinky ones that most people don't like, I love them. So here, sorry about this being a little bit off screen. I'm getting, it'll be on screen here in just a second. I'm just getting my sentiment lined up so that it's not crooked on the shape. And sorry, had to put my head right into the camera to make sure that I got that straight. I didn't want my sentiment to be off kilter. Then I'm going to ink that up, and I end up having to stamp it 3 times because for some reason I just wasn't pushing hard enough on that little letter G and it wasn't inking. So thankfully I got it all stamped and it looks really cute. And then I started coloring. I did not do any shading on these little goodies. I colored the cheese board in E57, and then I used Y18. Oh, sorry about my phone there. I used Y18 to color the cheese, and then I think I used Y13 to color the other piece of cheese. Now, if you've eaten Gouda, you know that it's you can get like smoked Gouda, but it's really not yellow. was my point. Was where I was going with this. It's kind of more of a white cheese. I don't care. I'm not being super specific with this, right? I mean, it's cheese and it's a card. So I don't have to be accurate when I'm making it. I wanted my cheese colors to match my background because I love a good monochromatic feel. So after this, I just had to cut my card base. I cut my card base at 4 1/4 by 11 and I scored it at 5 1/2. And then I was able to adhere the entire card front down onto the card base. And I kind of debated. I thought about using dimensionals or foam tape to pop this layer up. And I ended up deciding not to do that and just gluing it down flat. You can see my one piece of cheese hangs off the edge of this layer just a little bit. It ended up hanging just a teeny tiny bit off the edge of the card base as well. I'm not too worried about it. If my envelope doesn't fold exactly right at the top, it's okay. It won't be a big deal. So then I thought it would be fun to add some of the Trinity stamps, little shimmery spots. These are really cute. I didn't have any yellow or gold. I was kind of bummed. I was wishing I had some yellow or gold, but I had orange. And surprisingly, the orange looks really, really good. I mean, orange and yellow go great together, so it wasn't like catastrophic. I kind of do wish I would have had like a dark yellow, but that's okay. It worked out great. I still needed some sort of little something on here. I didn't want to just, I don't know. I have to always add some sort of shimmer or shine or sparkle or bling or something. I can't help myself. I also always add these in odd numbers. So this is just a thing for me. Actually, I've noticed it with a lot of card makers. Odd numbers are just more appealing to the eye. So you see that I have 5 here, and I also try to add them in a triangle shape. So that's also very appealing to the eye. The aesthetic is nice to do a triangle. And that is my finished card, friends. There is a link below the video for the products that I used today, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.